Class 1A gets their asses handed to them by a naked guy, and Season 4 is official. The hype is absolutely real, my friends, in the final episode of Season 3 of My Hero Academia, which ends up being a really epic battle against one of the members of the Big Three. In particular, Mirio Togata, who has the power of permeation, allowing him to essentially phase through objects and even the ground itself. This also means when people attack him, all of their attacks, punches, kicks, beams, what have you, are just going to phase directly through his body. However, his abilities come with the massive risk of the fact that whatever clothes he's wearing are simply just going to fall off of his body, and if you end up fighting against this guy, you might end up getting a glance of his willy. Mirio's words, not mine, but the fact that that dialogue is in this episode is absolutely hilarious, and this episode right here was just plain awesome. Getting to finally see Mirio Togata in action was, I think, well worth the wait, and a great way to end this season, and they also managed to build up tons of other new characters, like All Might's sidekick. Yes, he has a famous sidekick that we've never seen in the series, and it looks like he's going to end up being very important. Not to mention, we get to see the return of the villain Overhaul, who looks like he's getting ready to meet with the League of Villains. It's all just a massive build-up to the 4th season of the show, and in some ways, I was a little disappointed by that, because I was like, oh, I almost wish they didn't start a new story now, because I'm so excited to see more. But at the same time, I absolutely loved the tease, and seeing Mirio Togata in action, I think was honestly one of my favorite things from the entire season. It managed to be really action-packed, surprising, and also very funny all at the same time. So let's just go ahead and talk about some of the other big details of this episode of My Hero Academia. So this episode is mostly a straight introduction to the Big Three, the most amazing students at UA, and each of them are unique in their own way. We really only get to see Mirio in action in this episode, but we at least get to see the personalities of the other characters. First, there's Tamaki Amajiki, who is a very nervous character. He kind of reminds me of like an elfin version of Sasuke from Naruto, and basically he just is really nervous in front of people. He can't like face them, and that's kind of strange considering that he's one of the biggest students and he has to, you know, sort of put on a big show for everyone all of the time. In many ways, he's the exact opposite of Mirio Togata, who is very loud and brash and not afraid to show off his superhero skills and impart his wisdom. In very many ways, he is kind of like the next generation All Might, especially in his overall design, except that he looks like a cartoon character from the 1940s. But I love his character. He's just a big showboater. And then you have the female member of the group who goes by the name of Najire Hado. At least that's how I think it's pronounced. I probably just butchered that. But the fun thing about her character is that she is simply just that. Fun. She's cute, she's bubbly, and as the students of 1A actually say, she's kind of like an inquisitive kindergartner. She just looks like she's going to be fantastic, and I can't wait to see what her quirk is going to be. But this episode right here is basically all about Mirio Togata, who decides the best way to actually test this class is to have a battle against all of them at once, minus Katsuki Bakugo because he's still cleaning shit in the dorms. Now, Mirio Togata has a reason to be very confident in his abilities, and that's because, according to Aizawa, he's actually the closest to becoming the #1 pro hero, not just amongst the students, but even amongst the pros as well. That right there is already pretty freaking insane. So the hype was real when this action scene actually began, and you got to see him in action, go into a battle pose, and that's when we get the big reveal that whenever he utilizes his abilities, his clothes simply just phase right through his body and he ends up becoming very naked. The reason this is actually really clever and funny is because, one, I mean, it's just a big naked dude running around punching people, but he's actually going to be able to get into the head of a lot of his opponents when they actually end up catching a glance of his schlong. In particular, Jiro's reactions to this are just hilarious, but what I really love about his abilities is it almost looks like he's actually sort of warping all over the place. What I love about his fighting ability is it actually looks like he's sort of teleporting all over the place, when in actuality, he's sort of just allowing himself to slip through the ground and go underneath everyone, and then he sort of repositions himself and then deactivates his quirk, which sends him flying up through the ground, allowing him to get the slip on his opponents, sneak up from behind them, and almost make it appear as if he's just sort of warping all over the place, and he basically takes out everyone with just an amazingly badass punch. It's really satisfying, and they have no way of predicting what he's going to actually do. One of the standout scenes of this fight is when Deku actually starts to analyze what his abilities are, and he realizes that he's going to try and sneak up from behind him, and he tries to counterattack with a tick by getting him right in the face, but it just phases directly through his body, and that's when Mirio uses a technique which is really clever, where he actually just pokes his opponents in the eye, but his body actually ends up phasing through them, so he still manages to distract them to the moment where it allows him to take advantage of the situation and just do an amazingly badass uppercut. That was probably my favorite moment of the entire episode. It was oh so satisfying. But he absolutely just destroyed everyone. They did not stand a chance. And this guy is just infectious. He's so much like All Might, just declaring his badassery, saying it out loud, and just yelling power at the top of his lungs. He's a super fun character. So the battle ends, and Mirio absolutely wiped the floor with all of them, but he was also there to demonstrate that he actually had to really work for this power. His quirk, while it seems almost unstoppable, has a really big drawback. Whenever he actually goes into the ground and completely covers up his body completely, he can't hear, see, or breathe. He's basically nothing at that moment, and that can have a massive effect on your body. So when he goes into the ground, he actually has to sort of predict where his opponents are going to be. That way he'll always appear right behind them. He's clearly had to train with his quirk to a ridiculous degree, as well as training his body to be so effective in battle. So it shows that even if you have a quirk that has a massive drawback, if you manage to sort of sharpen it like a samurai sword, you can end up being really freaking badass, despite the fact that you are also incredibly goofy. Mirio is just a really fun character, and it was great finally getting to see him in action and actually install a lot of experience and motivation into all of these students. They realize that going forward, no one's going to be holding their hands anymore. They're going to have to get tougher if they're going to be going up against some villains. And this is all going to go down in the next season. They start to build it up at the very end of this episode, as Twice is getting ready to introduce Overhaul to the League of Villains. Even Tomura Shigaraki realizes that this guy's a pretty big deal. Twice has brought someone big along, and considering my commenters have been telling me that this guy's going to be a pretty big deal, I'm really excited to see what this Overhaul guy is all about. There are no clues as to what his quirk is, but his simple but creepy design gets me very intrigued, and for Tomura to actually recognize how incredibly powerful he is, that's got me hyped as well. We also get the introduction of All Might's sidekick, which I think is a pretty interesting prospect all on its own. Deku is desperately trying to get some advice from Gran Torino on how he can actually get an internship, and he wants to work with him, but he's too busy on another case. He says to go to All Might because he might be able to introduce him to his previous sidekick, someone that Deku probably knows about and is probably a pretty famous individual. And I believe that they actually show him off in this episode. They don't actually reveal him outright or say his name, they just refer to him by the name of Sir, and it almost seems like that Mirio and his group are working under this guy as well. Considering that he was the sidekick of All Might, he's probably like the sidekick of sidekicks, but his actual character kind of looks like just a standard detective kind of guy. I don't know what his deal's gonna be, but man, I'm excited for it, and the entire episode ends with the declaration that Season 4 is coming soon, and just that screen alone got me hyped. So what's the rundown on this episode of My Hero Academia? This was a great conclusion to an amazing season. Without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, Season 3 of My Hero Academia has been perfect. The pacing, the action, the characterization, the introduction of new characters, the building of the world in the next season, everything just absolutely worked in this show right here. And it went by so fast. It was that entertaining. I can't, like, say what episode was my favorite at this point, because there are so many that have amazing moments, and even at the end of the episode, they do a montage of some of, like, the biggest scenes of the entire season, and they even didn't show all of them. It just shows how jam-packed this season was with content, and I loved it, and it's got me so hyped for Season 4, for the introduction of brand new villains and new storylines, lines. The fact that the characters are going to have their provisional license means we're going to get out of the school setting and back into the real world of superheroes, and I'm pumped for that. But this episode right here was a great introduction to the big three, in particular Mirio Togata. His overall abilities were really fun. When I first saw them for the first time in the last episode, it reminded me a little bit of the character of Obito from Naruto, and in many senses you get to see a lot of that in this episode right here. But unlike Obito, it still has a lot of drawbacks of him basically having the sensation of falling. It's a pretty big weakness, but the way that it's actually described in this episode was great, and it was a really great lesson for all of the students who might not have as much confidence in their quirks, knowing that this is about as strong as they're ever going to get. As long as they manage to train and push themselves, they can become even more stronger. It's a good lesson, it's a timeless lesson. The lesson itself does not feel too forced, and you don't feel cheated because you got to see Mirio in action, and it was fun and action-packed and surprisingly funny with him running all over the place completely naked. I don't know how he's actually going to be able to function in society. Maybe they can create some sort of suit that allows him to actually continue to wear it all the time, or maybe we're just going to see this dude fighting naked all the time, which I think is going to be very funny. And him referring to it as a willy, like... I was like spitting my drink out while watching that. The other two members of the big three are completely mysterious, but I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of them in the next season, as well as the new villains and All Might's sidekick. Just, this was a great way to end the season and build hype for the next one. They didn't say when the next season is going to be coming, but I'm so excited to see when that's going to happen. I am also really glad that they decide to break up these seasons and not do the show continuously, because the pacing of the series, I think, has been damn near perfect, in my opinion. I don't read the manga version of My Hero Academia. I'm just experiencing it here in the anime, but what I can honestly say is I think this is one of the better-paced, long-running, big battle action series that I've actually seen, and it's slowly becoming one of my favorite. Like, every single season just manages to win me over even more, and this one right here is firmly placing My Hero Academia in, like, my top 5 favorite action series. That might just be the hype talking, but man, I just love these characters, this setting, and everything about it. And this season was perfect. This episode was great. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts about this episode and the entire 3rd season of My Hero Academia, and what you guys are hoping to see from the upcoming 4th season. Let's get a discussion going. What did you think about the battle against Mirio Togata, the brand new villain of Overhaul, All Might's sidekick? Let's get going. Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to stay tuned for the channel for tons of other anime and manga reviews. If you want to see any of my previous My Hero Academia anime reviews, there will be a playlist on the channel. And make sure to hit that little bell notification icon. That's really important. It'll let you know when all of my videos are about to be released. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a shameless plug in right here. I just did another brand new Super Smash Bros. Ultimate video. I counted down my top 5 wanted Echo Fighters for the game, so make sure to check that out. There will be a link for that in the description box, and at the end of this video, you're probably already looking at it right now. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, Plus Ultra!